Good Monday morning to you, Coach Man.
Man, have you had a busy morning already?
I wouldn't call it busy, man.
I mean, when you say give me 10, I feel like you're like out and about doing something, and that makes me feel like you've been like running errands on a Monday at like 7 a.m.
Well, you know me. I was just I wouldn't say out and about running errands. I was just taking care of a little bit of something, and yeah.
It's kind of timely. And before I go into a quick little story, I welcome Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 259.
259.
259. Every Monday and Thursday. Thank you for joining us, and the occasional Friday. But it's funny that you mentioned needing a delayed break to take care of what we would like to call business.
Mm-hmm.
I was just commenting in an athlete's Training Peaks, getting caught up from the weekend, and I kind of had a revelation in that going out for runs and not stopping to take a crap is like a big deal for some people. There's at least, not that that's what your business was, but
that was part of it, dude.
let's just say that business was your business. But there are at least like 6 or 7 athletes to where they get done with the run, and it could be spectacular. They could have broken every pace record imaginable, but the highlight of their day and what they comment most joyfully and with the greatest detail is the either including or the abstaining from a serious bowel movement. And that's how they gauge the success of their run. And I just athlete that. I mean, but to be totally honest, and I'm sure there are more than a few athletes that deal with this, but it's a huge deal for them because sometimes they'll go for like an hour and a half run and have to stop like 3 times, and some of them will have to stop once in like a 25-minute run. And so like your running is just too much, but yeah, it seems to be kind of an issue for some people, but it's just funny what athletes will put in Training Peaks as like the highlight of their day is to make it on a long run without having to stop and drop a deuce.
Wow. Man, I guess does that happen a lot in races? I know that's like a huge thing the morning of the race. It's like, okay, we got to take care of some business before we get out there because it's like the number one most important thing. But
it's funny because of these 2 of my most chronic run poopers just did a race and did the entire thing like 6 hours plus without having to stop and drop a deuce.
Mm-hmm. So
they've proven that they can do it and not stop, and so now I just got to stick with it with training. But yeah, we'll get on to more pressing topics. But we wanted to cover something that's probably important for everyone. Because let's be honest, we all go number 1, we all go number 2, and this is podcast 259.
Yeah, probably ought to move on from that one. It's just, but it is sort of a reality triathlon. I know it's like a kind of a how do you get it going, but anyway, so I'm guessing that you didn't watch any of the Masters.
I watched almost every hole.
Oh, you did? Okay. That is
yeah, we not every hole. We went to Radnor Lake for a little bit yesterday, but we took some time away and got out of the house because we've been kind of jammed in the house for a while yesterday, but yeah, I watched a majority of it, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with today's topic.
Okay, well, let's see if I can lead us.
Yeah, let's let you lead the way.
Now, while I'm watching, of course, all my buddies back home are big hack, beer golfers or whatever you want to call them. So, but they're all so serious about this is like, they know everything about golf, and it becomes this big text thing, and everybody was like, and I get it. Everybody's really happy for Tiger. He's been through a lot, and it's really cool. But I just cannot, because I rarely dial in like that. But when you can get dialed in, you start to feel the emotion or the mental fortitude of some of these golfers is absolutely unbelievable to me. How they can, some of these shots that they have to walk up and hit in front of literally a large portion of the world watching, but just with the pressure on them, I mean, I would miss the ball half the time. I think it just feels like, and I know they go through it all the time and they're used to it. And it's it's the same thing I think about when people try to hit a 90 mile an hour fastball. They do it every day, so they get used to it. But the mental strength and the ability to just zone in and focus on what's going on and take care of business, to me, is mind-boggling at that level.
It is. It's insane. And the fact that, like, not only the amount of focus you have to do to swing the club and hit them, because golf for me is like way out of my league. Like, I can go to top golf and hit like one out of every, I don't know, 60 to 70 straight down the fairway. Other than that, they just go more east and west. I'm a pretty solid putter, not gonna lie. I can putt with the best of them, but in order to play golf, that would require me ever getting it on the green, which would never happen. Mm-hmm. But I agree, the amount of like mental focus that it takes them to be surrounded by thousands of white, rich, mostly drunk males, is to focus on that is it's crazy. And then to know that there's millions of people and and everyone's rooting for you, that's right there for the most part, which I think adds more pressure. It's an incredible feat, and I watched it and I loved it. I enjoyed it. I haven't always liked Tiger Woods. And I still don't want to say he's like my favorite person, but I'm a huge fan of people who decide to not quit and stick around regardless of what other people might want to think and say. He went through obviously a really not so much fun part of his life where every single sin he basically committed was broadcast over the airwaves and the headlines, and everybody was hopping up on their soapboxes to criticize him as if they had never messed up themselves, and pretty much cast him aside for done. And no one thought he was going to ever win another tournament. No, he's ostracized, and nobody likes him. Just wash up, just retire. You're just competing. Quit putting yourself through this misery. And you go through 4 to 5 back surgeries, fusing his spine together, and then you come out on a weekend and you win the Masters. I mean, it's incredible. It really is. I mean, whether you like the guy or not, I think sometimes people have a difficult time disassociating the fact that you can appreciate fully an accomplishment and something that someone's done, and then basically set aside your personal belief or personal, vendetta or like or not like of this person, who they are off the sporting, because let's be honest, if you watch football, then you can't do that. Especially if you watch pro football. But there's just so many sports we watch where we choose to, forgive and not forgive it in order of its convenience, for us. But
plus, you just don't know where he came from. Like, if you read into his story, like how much of a driver his dad was back in the day, and how intense his life became focused around succeeding at golf from basically his childhood. And I always have, I guess, definitely empathy for situations like that, because that was his life. And the idea that you can kind of just navigate that without, basically kind of going halfway insane and obsessed and, psychopathic about the whole thing and just live a normal life is just unrealistic. The demands that were put on his life, and
I mean, that's it. It's just like to judge someone and say, you know what, I could have handled that better, when basically his entire life had been dedicated as a protege to be the next greatest golf thing ever. Whatever you want to say, and we can move on from this. But it's just like, don't judge don't judge a book by its cover, but don't judge someone's experience, what they went through, based on your ability to think you can always be what they weren't. And I think it's just a good lesson in not judging people, and then also looking at yourself in the mirror and realizing that you've probably screwed up a lot too. But, the worst things you ever did weren't broadcast on ESPN for 7 weeks straight. But I thought one of the greatest things about it was the fact that no matter what, he had and I think this is true with a lot of athletes in general, and this is kind of where I wanted to go with the podcast, was that you're only done when you choose to be done. And I think a lot of athletes deal with that that conversation, that internal demon of convincing themselves that they're quote unquote done, or they're never going to reach a specific pedestal or reach a specific achievement because they keep getting older, or they've got, because a lot of us use these life experience circumstances to kind of segregate our races into specific categories. Before I had kids, my PR was this, but since I've got kids and a job, like now my PR is this, or pre-stress fracture, ACL tear, my PR was this, but ever since then, my PR is this, so I've got this going for me, and then now, and then as athletes get older, it's obviously more and more difficult to fight that that chasing of a specific number, because I don't think as you age when that's actually going to be. Like you're not going to wake up on one day and be like, you know what, today's the day. I've finally gone over the crest of my athletic ability and its ability to catch up and get better, and age has finally taken over, and I'm not going to be able to ever PR ever again. Because it's just not going to be possible, because my body can't do it because of how much older I'm getting. Like, the thing is, you're never going to wake up and understand that that's happening. You might not even appreciate that race that happened that you'll never have again, because we don't know when it's going to happen. And I know that women do this, especially with children, is they will have pre-baby and post-baby accomplishments, because obviously, we have a son, and Allie's gone through a lot of this herself. It's like your body goes through all of these insane changes that men just can't fathom and understand, obviously, because we don't give birth. But having watched it and talked to Allie and seen some of her things, and obviously talked to so many of the women that I coach that have had kids, it's a huge deal. Your body goes through unbelievable changes. Things are different, needs are different, and everything changes. And so, and then sometimes for some athletes that can be also with, that can come with weight gain, or your body becomes a different shape, or you carry things differently. And so, you'll have a different, you can have a pre-baby. For example, I just had an athlete who did a half marathon, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and she PR, a lifetime PR, which was over 13 years old. But it was funny because as she commented in her Training Peaks, I think, she's like, this wasn't a post baby PR, this was an overall PR. And I just think it's an interesting topic and an interesting mindset that I think we all struggle with, and I think we do it on purpose for your body is generally going to lean itself more towards self-preservation, especially when it comes to your ego and your athletic ability, is to kind of create scenarios and create race, times and stuff that you can put into different categories to still feel like you're improving, and still feel like you're chasing a number or giving yourself more credit because it's post this or not post this. So I just think the mindset of you're only done when you want to be done is just something that's so important with athletes, especially in endurance events, because so many athletes struggle with that conversation of you're just done. You're never going to be able to do this. Because I deal with athletes that have this thought process, or that struggle with. I've struggled with this thought process. Mm-hmm. It's like you're done. And you're never going to be what you used to be, or your life is so much different now that you can't do this. And I just think it's a real testament to his ability to never accept that, no matter what he was trying to do, no matter what he was trying to accomplish, no matter what kind of surgeries he had, no matter what everybody else on the outside was telling him that he can't do, he just chose to not be done. Mm-hmm. And I think he would even tell you, I haven't read all of the post-race interviews, but I think he thought he was done. From everything that I've read, he thought he was done too, but he just kept at it, and then one day it all kind of fell into place. And I think that we all can have those opportunities again if we just choose to it's not about not listening to others, because as age groupers we're not that important, so nobody gives a shit if we're done or not. It's just the narrative that I think that we tell ourselves in terms of we can't, or we're not going to, or post surgery, or post baby, or post job, or post college, we're never going to be able to do this again. But I just think it's a false narrative that if we choose to believe it, we'll become it. If we choose to keep chipping away and just not accepting it, either we'll find ourselves achieving something greater, or we'll still achieve better than we would have had we accepted it a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. As you know, we're both big analogy people, and I always try to learn different things from different sports or whatever I watch or different people. And after Saturday's round, they were worried about storms coming in the afternoon, so they shifted the starting time for the Sunday round of the Masters. I think the first tee time was at 7:30, and they learned about this towards the end of the day on Saturday. So Sunday morning, they had the first golfers left at 7:30, and normally it's pretty good sleep-in time for the leaders. And they asked Tiger about it, and obviously he knew by then, but they said, so what's your day going to look like tomorrow? And he said, well, I'm going to tee off at 9:30. I'll probably get up at 3:30 and start going and getting my body ready and getting things going. But it really made me think about a race is like, because I'm obviously a sleep-inner guy and I try to get the most I can. But I think what gets lost sometimes on his situation, I can't remember exactly how old he is, but in his 40s, right? Something. But
yeah, I mean, who cares? I mean, if you're old, but dude, you've had 4 back surgeries.
Right, but I mean, that's all relative to the fact that he feels older probably than...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But the point is I think what gets lost in all this stuff is, he could have, there was times when he didn't even know if he was really going to be able to play golf, period, let alone win the Masters. But I think what gets lost is the extra work that he probably puts in, and probably got up at 3:30 and did a few things, and then ate a good breakfast, and then stretched or did warm-ups or did whatever he does because he specifically mentioned to get the body going and get the body ready in the morning before he teed off. So I wonder how many people do that in triathlon, as far as like really, other than just getting up and walking to transition and shooting the shit the whole time and putting your bags out and whatever the case may be. I wonder how many people literally kind of get their body ready for that race. So, but not only that, what he had to come through, and as I get older, it's interesting, because I'm not obviously post-baby or post-surgery or anything like that, but every day, it's almost like it kind of just gets a little bit tougher, on certain days. And it's easier to throw in the towel, but you almost have to go the extra mile to loosen your body up or to get your body limbered or get your mind ready or get whatever it is in that spot to keep going. And that doesn't mean you have to slow down. It just gets a little bit tougher to keep up with the pace that you've had, and that's just sort of nature and aging or whatever you want to call it. So you're right. I think it is, you're done when you choose to be done, but that can get a little bit harder, and I don't know what makes that a little bit easier, if it's having people around or just motivation or and goes back to probably eating right or eating I don't know, man. It's just
I think, going back to what you said, it's that phrase of, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Mm-hmm.
And so many athletes, myself included, I think everyone included, has really gets in that phase where they're all about doing maintenance and mobility work and some light strength training, and then everything gets really, really great, and so they just stop doing it again.
Yep.
And so and I even have athletes that I'm like, that they'll just, most of them are pretty open about it and readily admit things were going good, things were feeling good, so I stopped, and then now I've got this again, so obviously I have to really pay attention on it. And it's those small things, but like he said, because I think he gets up, he feels like a Kobe Bryant for me too. He gets up at 3:30, 3:45 every day, probably no matter what, to get his body going and get things ready to go. And the fact that it takes more time to get your body ready to do the things you're going to ask it to. It's the same. We use the analogy and the comparison of treating our body like a car with its chassis and with its engine. And the same thing goes with vehicles. I mean, the older it is, the more maintenance it usually requires, and the more frequent maintenance it usually requires. And you go out and start a brand new car up on a 20-degree morning, it's probably going to start right up. You go out and you start and you can probably drive out and the heat comes on in 2 minutes. Well, you want to start up a 1987 Corolla, you're probably going to have to give it 15 or 20 and a few cranks of the engine to even get it going.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole different approach. And I think that one of the things that I think athletes tend to forget is that the demands that we put on our body and the things that we need to do in order to prepare it is we always look back on, and this is why I think journaling and keeping things in Training Peaks or whatever whatever platform you use to kind of chronicle and journal your training with data, not just data but numbers and thoughts and paragraphs and what you did before and you did after it's not really a secret, or it shouldn't be to find, how did you come to do X, Y, and Z? And yeah, you think, oh, I just got fitter. Well, what else were you doing to set yourself up for success during this phase where you were able to reach and have these breakthroughs? How was your diet? How was your sleep? How was your recovery? Were you foam rolling? Were you taking care of yourself? Like most of the time, all those things come into play, but those are also the things that don't get any headlines. They're the things that no one else sees. They're not the early mornings in the dark where you're doing, mobility stretches, or you're doing a warm up, or you're making sure your body's in alignment, or going to the chiro, or getting a massage, or going to a physio, like whatever it is to get your body ready to do the work that you want it to do. And it's all those things that you don't see, but are the only reasons you're even able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And there's because so many things go into the success or failure of the sessions that we do in training and the races that we do during the season, that we love to make them simple because I think it allows us the freedom of not having to look deeper into reasons why. Because let's be honest, most people don't like to look past maybe one or two questions, because a lot of people just want to critically think or look into, because then you're starting to take the fun out of it. And a lot of athletes don't like to kind of cross that barrier of looking through the factors that led to a great performance or not a great performance. We just would rather call, oh, well, the data said I was going to have one and I did, or the data said I wasn't and I didn't. But we can't, and so you choose either to explain it that way, or do you choose not to explain it in other ways that affect how the lead up has gone. And I think that you have to look at when we have 24 hours of a day and your training only consists during the week, like maybe Monday through Friday, of 1 to 2 hours max. Sometimes it's definitely not irresponsible. That's an over dramatic word. I think it's somewhat negligent in terms of looking at where you are in your athlete life cycle and how things can develop or aren't developing within your life, and the stressors that are happening is taken into account during those phases. So like when you look back at your training, or you look at your last week and you think, I nailed this week, I feel great. You have to also look at not just these obsessive trends that people want to look at in their scores and Training Peaks. It's also where were things in your life? Were you high stress or low stress with your job? Were you high stress or low stress with your relationship? Your relationships? Were you sleeping well? Did you get sick? How are you eating? Like all those play just as much, if not more, into a factor of what you see as the result, which is training. But again, we just like to look at, I think the only time people really look deeper and objectively is when it comes to temperature or terrain. But I would just really encourage athletes when they look, like, today was a little bit slower, just because, it was a little bit hotter and the humidity was this and the hills were rolling and it was a little bit hotter than I'm used to, so I can expect it to be slower. Mm-hmm. But so they only still take into account the different environmental factors within that 40-minute, hour, whatever it is, stretch. They don't take into account and also look at, well, I know I didn't recover well yesterday. I probably shouldn't have eaten when I did. I definitely didn't feel appropriately. I've been short on sleep. And so you have to look at all those things. So if you're not, like I said, if you're not journaling or chronicling, whatever you want to say it, how your life is going and looking at those trends and what equals what, then you probably won't ever be able to fully either appreciate where you are or in turn dictate and change how things are going in the interim to plan your next phase, because that's something, again, a lot of athletes don't do when they're self-coach or following a training plan is training plans assume life is great. Your training plan doesn't auto-adjust because you had a stressful day at work. It doesn't auto-adjust because you just broke up with your boyfriend. It also doesn't auto-adjust if you just got into a new relationship with your girlfriend. Again, I think one of the most underestimated things that's talked about is good and exciting and wonderful things are also incredibly stressful. And like getting in a new relationship, that's really, really good. Guess what? That takes more time and more energy, and it's a good same with a new job. You leave a job that you hated and you grab a job that you love. Well, guess what? Now you're going to be putting more mental and emotional energy into that job than you were your past job. You're going to be learning different things. You're going to be doing so again. When people say, life is great, I've got a lot of things going for me, it's perfect. Yeah, okay, well, guess what? Those are all good and great. It's still demanding, And so I think that again, there's so many things to take into account, and I know it can seem overwhelming, but I can't encourage athletes enough to look into and understand how important it is to take into everything, the fueling and the stress and the hydration and how you're eating and how you're sleeping, and then maintenance. And if you need to foam roll or if you need to do, see someone to help adjust things, it's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. And I think the little things that you're talking about are the things that make people like Tiger Woods so great, that nobody talks about, nobody sees them, nobody knows what's going on, while he's preparing for the Masters, really. And we just see the highlights. And I think this can translate back into pro triathletes. Well, I know it can, right? I mean, we've talked to Starkowitz on this podcast and how he talked about he drives the course the day before or whatever, and he looks at road conditions on every little stretch of that road. Is he going to be able to go here? Is he going to be able to have to pull back, whatever? But that's just a top line. Who knows what's going on in his life normally, how he prepares for every ride. And, he doesn't, most likely, maybe he does on some occasions, but I would guess that he doesn't necessarily just wake up and get out of bed and throw a few little water in and jump on the bike without thinking about what's going on, what he's trying to accomplish, how he's going to get ready for that ride, and what it's going to take to get the most out of that ride. Instead of, I know that probably 90% of the people listening to this podcast think about, well, I got a long run, I'll just run up, I'll warm up on the run. You just walk out the door and start running. And I think that's fine if you decide that you want to walk for the first half mile or something and kind of loosen up your body and do some dynamic stretching as you get ready to run. But if you just start going to run and then you're running a little bit too fast right away, then that just kind of backfires on the whole process. And there's no time for dynamic stretching or whatever it may be, push-ups or something that's going to get your blood flowing before you actually go work out. It's like, I think that those things are totally ignored. It's like, it's like my dad said when he used to be drinking, he used to have a few beers at home before he went out to drink. It's like you got to warm up before you're going to get into something hard.
Yeah, I hear that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying,
it's
unfortunately.
Funny when you put it like that, but
well, it's also not just the maintenance work, it's the amount of time that they put in that isn't fancy at all. That it's the long days in the saddle where they're not smashing intervals.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny that it's funny when you look at pro athletes in their social media versus age group athletes. The age group athlete, for the most part, only posts like their breakout, heart and lung smashing results. Whereas mostly the pros are like, yep, another 5-hour day in the saddle. Like
Yeah.
two just chilling, or another long day, another long day, another long day. And of course, it's different for them because of the demands and the time they can allocate to their training. But it's. I just think that we tend to only look at the effect when training, and we rarely ever dive into the cause. And athletes, they want to look at the watts and the pace and the HRV and the data. And I think sometimes it's you can peel back the layers and look to why did this happen, or what led me to this overtraining, or what led me to this injury. Was it in fact that I was swimming too much, biking too much, running too much, or was it that my mechanics were off, or was it that I didn't address something when I should have, or was because I was super, very, very tired? Like it's not uncommon for athletes that fly and go and travel to get sick. And one of the things that I often have to have like conversation of is like, oh, I'm going on vacation, or I can sneak this workout in, and when I get back from this vacation, I'm ready to crush it. And like their first 2 days, I give them like the easiest most of the time, depending on the athlete. But most of the time, it's like something really easy, because like they're like, whoa, like I'm ready to get back to work. I'm like, I know you say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the tendencies for most athletes is to be more fatigued. Your immune system is more compromised, and you've probably picked up God knows what on the airplane. And the last thing you want to do is dig yourself a hole. So what's 1 or 2 days? In terms of taking it easy, again, those days are beneficial. Like I think there's when people hear easy and chill, it's like you don't realize that that's how most of your stuff probably should be, and that those things are good. So what's the point in revving it back up and compromising yourself and your progression for the sake of a day or two? But yeah, I mean, I think there's a million different directions that you could go in terms of, what ultimately leads to people to success. And I guarantee you, if you asked, Tiger or any big athlete, what they would, if they could pinpoint a day where that made it worth it, it wouldn't be anything close or not worth it, but that led them to where they are now, or this accomplishment. I guarantee you, for him, it would be those, or that would be like those early mornings where nobody's around and nobody's cheering and nobody's watching, and he's not even on the golf course, but he's preparing to get on there and do his best. And you can't fully do your best on or during a training session, swimming, cycling, or running, if you don't prepare to do so. And fueling is a huge one. Like this time of year when we're going from, some places are going from like 30 to 70 within a day, and you're heading into heavier volume for a lot of athletes with their races coming up. It's amazing the amount of comments that I'm getting here this week and the last 2 weeks. I'm like, totally underfueled. And again, we look at it as athletes as, I just have to fuel during this workout and I'll be okay. And then they get home from it and they've got, families to be with and kids to be with and honeydews and go out and do this, and they just neglect either rolling or foam rolling if they need to, or proper hydration and recovery. And so the next day they're already in a hole, or they didn't drink hardly any water the whole day or the day before, and they wonder why they had a crappy workout. Mm-hmm. And then they start to second guess things. I'm like, just drink more water. And you have to stay on. And this was like the message I've been driving home with so many athletes that I have now that are prepping for Texas here in a few weeks, and then Chattanooga 70.3 in Virginia. It's like, you can't have an off day right now. You can't just be lazy, not with training, but with how you're treating your body and what you're paying attention to. You can't just eat Mexican food all day and have 2 margaritas and expect to feel awesome the next day. That's probably not going to happen. Also, what you can't do is wake up and have a small breakfast and not have any water the whole day and then expect to have a decent workout at 6 p.m. And then not only are you not going to have a good workout, but you've now dug yourself a hole on a depleted body with depleted energy that's already probably somewhat dehydrated. So your recovery is going to be even harder for the next day. So you're always working behind the eight ball in terms of but what you want to be doing, especially in a phase that's so important, whether you're tapering, when sleep and hydration and fueling is important, to hold on a second, man, I got to go look at this in case this is somebody from my mom.
Okay.
Yeah, Amazon. But no, it's one of those things where you have to, where it's never just the sacrificing of a workout. It's always, as again, we always talk about this, is like it has a domino effect. And when you're reaching, critical, I would call it critical stress or critical fatigue mass, anything you add or remove makes a huge difference. Because during these phases where athletes are probably at the highest volume or highest intensity, or really trying to nail these specific workouts to put them in a great position, if they don't get enough sleep or they underfuel or they don't take the right amount of nutrition, not only are you missing an opportunity, but you're also putting yourself in a bad position to recover and do it again the next day. And the last thing you want to do is put yourself in a position to miss opportunities in an important time.
Yeah. There's I kind of hear there's a sort of a staple thought about, I asked a lot of athletes, how they fuel on their runs or whatever. And a lot of times I'll hear, well, if it's under an hour, I just take water. And, if it's over an hour, I'll bring some goo or gels or whatever. And, I just wonder, like if you're going out for a run in an hour and, you're kind of in maybe a taper or, just it's an easy run or whatever the case may be, even if it's a harder run, especially if it's a harder run under an hour. I just wonder if you're setting yourself up for behind the eight ball kind of stuff if you're not. And I always hear that on easy runs or easy rides, it's a really good time to restore your glycogen. And because your body is moving, your blood circulating, and you're not really, it's sort of like a way to get back ahead of the depletion that you might be getting into with triathlon training. Because like you said, I just think that the nature of triathlon training in general is, think about the extra energy you're expending that most normal people don't. And all of a sudden you're eating the same and trying to stay ahead of the energy game, and you're not fueling right on the bike or on the run. And all of a sudden you're behind the eight ball every time you get done, and you're dehydrated. One thing I try to do before each run is I take a glass of water before the run, and right when I get done, I just pound 2 glasses of water. And it's sort of like a safeguard for me.
You don't pound chocolate milk?
I don't pound chocolate milk typically. I will try to eat, like that's the thing is like, it's a really good idea to eat, I think, after a big workout. And I still haven't nailed exactly what that may be. But my thing is always like, well, I know that I'm probably on the verge of chronic dehydration most of the time when it starts getting hot and I start doing these long rides and these long runs, even though you think you're, drinking enough fluid on there. But I think you're putting your body, at a shortage all the time. So I'm just trying to prevent with a little bit before, because I'm like how many people slam a glass of water before they go run? I don't know. You fill up your bottle maybe to carry and whatever, but I always just go right to it. I just afterwards drink a couple glasses of water just because I feel like that's probably the best thing I can do for my body in that situation.
Well, I think in order to give a visual and analogy for athletes is that we are often addicted to the fact that we feel the bigger the hole, the greater the gain.
Yeah.
And so if I said, hey, Mike, say you and I are neighbors, so I'm like, hey, dude, come out here and look at my backyard. I dug this hole, and it's this giant hole, and it's huge. You're like, dude, you put in a lot of work. And then over here, I'm like, hey, look at this hole. And they're like, yeah, that's a foot deep, dude. Congrats.
Yeah.
But then I step to the side and you see 85 to 90 more small holes. You'd be more impressed.
Mm-hmm.
But what's going to take you longer to fix out of the gate immediately? It's that huge hole. Because the larger the hole, the more demanding the recovery is. Again, this is why we talk about the addiction that so many athletes have to smashing workouts and epic days and crushing myself. It's congrats. congratulations on ruining the next 3 or 4 days of your training.
Congrats.
And congrats. So if you're listening, congrats. But the point is to again appropriately challenge yourself so you can refill it, because the bigger the hole, the harder it's going to be to fill it back up and make it something worthwhile. And athletes, again, like over the winter, or especially when athletes are like, yeah, I got by in this run with only like 100 calories. Congratulations on being sore for 4 days because you didn't take in enough carbohydrates and you ran that totally depleted. Thumbs up. Like, you don't get extra credit for starving yourself during a run or a ride. You don't get points for that. You're suffocating and starving your body that needs nutrients in order to be able to not just continue to train, but to get ahead of it so you don't have to come home and feel like you have to pound 600 calories worth of food. Because if you went out on a 2-hour run and it's super, because listen, we're now getting into this time of year where the seasons be changing. I mean, they're changing a lot for most of us, like winter to spring and summer back and forth for 3 days, but because that seems like the climate that we're in right now. But we're about to hit like 70, 80 degrees where it's going to be warm and humid. And the demands for that are going to be a lot different than the demands that you just had heading out for a 2-hour run in those conditions versus heading out for an hour run 3 weeks before when it was 30 with no humidity. And you might be able to get away with that, but now you've got to train your body to keep taking those in and stay on top of those things, because the larger, not only are you demanding things of your body with the little micro tears you're putting in it when you run and you do all these specific sessions, then ask it to recover, is that, it's who would you rather triage at the end of an event? A person who's been fueling the whole time and got to the finish line, somewhat fatigued but drank water the whole time, or the person who didn't drink for 2 hours and imagine the amount of extra work required to get them feeling back to what's somewhat normal. And athletes, as much as we love to, act like we're professionals a lot of the time, we don't treat ourselves like we are, even though you should, because you're still doing the same things and you still have the same demands. You're just asking it at a different speed and at a different pace than a professional would. And those demands aren't any different. They're just relative based on speed and power and output. But yet we don't want to take care of those things or pay attention to those things. A lot of the athletes right now, it's about training your gut to be able to take in as many calories as possible on race day, and especially on the bike. And that's something I've had to get across to some athletes right now, is like, even on your easy rides that you probably, for whatever reason wanted to do fasted for some of the year, even on your easy rides, hour and a half, you need to start practicing getting in 300 to 350 calories an hour, even on those easy rides in the middle of the week. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just about that ride. It's about training your gut, getting it used to what it needs to take in, so that when you do these longer rides, they're with a purpose and you can actually take in the amount of calories that you want to take in. And so, like, again, it's just those small little details that, again, we all like to have the same setups and the same power meters and the same data and use the same things and go to the same races, all the professionals. But the reason most of them are professionals, a little more athletic ability, possibly different life circumstances, but they do all the things, all the smaller, more important things that nobody sees that you might consider boring. They do all of those perfect, while the traditional hobbyist triathlete totally neglects.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a key point about training your gut, and because I think it was a couple of podcasts at the end, I was going to talk about how I really think I've realized that I don't take enough calories on my bike. And I went out a couple of weeks ago and rode the trace and really tried to force feed a little bit, and I overloaded my bottles with a couple more scoops that I normally would, and ate a little bit more and had some more gels and things like that. And I really went out for my first ride of the year, and it was really a successful ride for me. And I did feel like at the end, sometimes when you get done riding out there, if we do 60, 70, 80 miles or whatever and just do a ton of hills and everything, and it was pretty sunny, and I think it was fairly warm that day. And you can kind of be zapped, like in a delirium a little bit. And I really felt like I kind of was normal when I got done with that. I was tired, but I wasn't in that sort of, what do you call that state? When you're kind of just like loopy and out of it and kind of, I don't know if it's like a motion, we stop moving and all of a sudden we're just like, but you know what I'm saying? It's kind of, there's definitely a difference between getting done and feeling like your legs did a lot of work and getting done and feeling like your body is like a whole new person, like that can't figure out, it just needs to start eating and scarfing down as much food and whatever as possible. But I think that's the point, right? Is you just get depleted. And I think that early in the year, those kind of feelings might be okay. And I think that's back to the whole idea of, that's why people, I guess, fast on rides, is that they're trying to train their body to burn fat or something. Is that the whole, I mean, that just seems like.
Let me know how that works out for you when you have to go run.
Yeah, well, for sure. And like I said, I've dabbled with that a little bit, like I said, early season, and maybe it pays off. I don't know how you gauge that or what the deal is, but it's a sticky thing, this idea of losing weight in a smart manner, I think, during triathlon. I mean, yeah,
people obsess about it, but they just like to lose it because they always associate losing weight with becoming faster, which is like so far from the truth. Like if they do it in an irresponsible way, that because a lot of people will get lighter and also get slower because the amount of energy their body requires to function at a high rate with high demands and accumulate a high stress and recover, they can't do anymore because they're starving their body and they can't recover appropriately. And back to what you said, I would probably venture that, I don't know, 7, 8 out of 10 people who go out for the very first ride of the year after 5 or 6 months on the trainer woefully underhydrate and take in so much less nutrition than they ever thought they would. Because most people, that the majority, as I have athletes that just did this, did they go all winter on their trainer, hard rides, long rides, they can grab water wherever they want to. They can sit up whenever they want to. They know how to do things. They have nothing else that their mind takes it away from. Now you put them outside, and now they're more worried about keeping 2 hands on the bike and staying upright than they are about drinking. And then they get to the end of the ride and they wonder why they bonked and why they felt terrible. Well, it's because they didn't hydrate. Like, and I'm sure I've done this before. I think everyone has done this. Like, they're like, looked like, I don't know when the last time I drank was. They just forget, because now you have all this other stimulus that's around you where you have to pay attention and be on it and have 2 hands on the bike. You can't just sit up and hop on your phone and play on Facebook, and you got to actually, concentrate on real world going 20 miles an hour on pavement with vehicles. And that's a whole different kind of demand and a whole different kind of focus. And you have to be on a whole different kind of interval in terms of either drinking to thirst and paying attention to that and being present enough to understand that, or simply just doing the smallest thing of just setting a timer on your GPS unit or bike computer that tells you to drink and alerts you to drink every 10 minutes. But then a lot of people, they're so terrified to take their hands off the wheel. And I know a lot of people struggle with this the last 2 years at Louisville, with how crazy packed the course can get on the second loop, how sometimes the roads are less than dynamite, and then you combine that with crazy crosswinds. A lot of them would probably do this, like, this assessment of, okay, do I risk taking a drink or do I risk getting blown over and falling off my bike? Well, what are you going to choose? I'm going to choose to, not get blown off my bike. It seems like a fairly easy one, because I think some even didn't even hydrate and fuel until they could come to a complete stop at an aid station. I mean, I saw people do that.
Yeah.
And so again, like, there's just, again, going back to the podcast we did last week, is there are just so many more different things to take into account once you go from fake world to real world. And those things can be so like if you're getting close enough, like, get outside. It's not just getting outside to get in a ride. It's getting outside so your body and your mind can soak everything in and remind yourself of the new demands that it's going to be to take in and to focus, and that you don't get extra credit for taking in less calories. This isn't a who can become the skinniest game. It's who, for most people, it's who can perform the best. And guess what? In order to do that, you're going to have more than just a bottle of water.
Yep. Now, I don't know anything about physics really, but it just dawned on me when
shocking.
it just dawned on me when you're talking, because I've always been fascinated by this idea of going out into the elements for the first time and really, spending time out there and how exhausted you can feel. And so if you're riding a bike and it's perfectly still, it's not windy at all, you're basically creating a 20-mile-an-hour wind. Does that seem logical?
Yeah, feels good. Yep.
So like if you stood out in the wind for 4 hours, your odds, wind in its own right will dry you up. Right? Windy conditions dry your skin. And I think that is like one of the more underrated elements of it is the fact that you're riding with wind. Like if you're riding on a trainer, you're not really feeling any wind, so there's no external effect on your body and your skin, and you're breathing in all that wind and oxygen and whatever. And I think you dehydrate more too, just because of that.
Yeah, I think like you said, on the trainer, no matter how good your fan is, you still, it's not going to be a 20-mile-an-hour wind, and it's not going to be right in your face. It's not going to be on your whole body, unless you have like the super setup with like 4 commercial fans like right in front of you. You're still going to be dripping in sweat, and so that's going to tell your body, because you can feel it and you can see it dripping off your brow. I would say like up to probably like 75, 80 degrees, you're like, I could ride for 2 hours and probably not have anything else to drink and be totally fine.
Yeah.
But then you come outside and you feel awesome, but yet you're riding in 90 to 95 degree, 100 degree heat with super humidity. No matter what you're doing, you can feel it on your skin, you can feel it on your brow, and so you're like, you know what, I should definitely drink right now. It's just those signals that we send to ourselves. And so when you put yourself in a category and you go from a climate to where, because I know we always talk about going from cooler to warmer climates, but a lot of times athletes don't take into account going from a really warm climate to a cooler climate. You also might find yourself not hydrating enough, because you're used to having those internal and external signals of core temperature and sweat and perspiration that happen, that like, I gotta drink, my mouth feels parched, versus you go out from being in 80 to 90 degree heat all the time, then you hop into a race where it's 40 or 50 and you don't take in the calories because those signals don't come.
Yeah,
and
that's
so you
a really
get
good
behind.
point.
So you get behind, and those things also have to be something that you take into account.
Yeah. I remember riding at Louisville last year. That was like one of the main things I tried to do was, it's so hard, man, to keep drinking in cold conditions like that. And I don't know if if I really needed to drink as much as I did, but I was really going overboard.
Well, what do you mean by overboard?
Well, I guess, I was sort of like, a lot of times I'll go out and I try to, put down at least a bottle and a half in between aid stations, for example. So I was really pushing that number. Basically 1 Gatorade, 1 water or something like that. And I don't necessarily think that is the right strategy. I just think it's sort of a safe one.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have your bike nutrition totally dialed in, that's kind of like a benchmark, and then maybe putting in like some goo or something on top of it or whatever. Without getting dialed into exactly what we need to do. But like if you don't know exactly, and if you kind of lose your way, it's probably a good idea to try to drink a Gatorade every aid station or something, and then supplement. But anyway, so I kind of had that in my head. Because bottles were hard to grab and out of my bag. I couldn't even get the back bottle, it was just with gloves on and all that weird stuff. So I was just trying to drink a lot, and it just created a piss storm, really, more than anything.
Hey, better to piss than not to piss.
Yeah.
I would generally say 1 good piss on the bike is pretty much money. That's definitely not scientific, but I would say if you can get by with 1 P or 2 Ps on the bike and no Ps on the run, you're fairly close to perfect hydration.
Yeah, that's a good.
I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that no pig. I mean, I think I remember that the last year that we did Louisville, when it was a real Louisville, when it was super hot, Louisville 1.0. I think I peed like 3 times on the bike.
Oh, you did. You went hard. Yeah,
I went hard.
I normally do a lot, and I don't think I did that day, and I think that's where I screwed up.
Yeah,
because that proves that I was really way behind.
Yeah, I went way hard because I remember it all went on my left shoe. It didn't even go to my right shoe. But anyway, it's it's a conversation for another.
That's a locker room conversation.
That is a locker room conversation. But it is that you should. It's one of those things that, again, take into account. I don't think you can, especially in those conditions, take into it, because it was still one of my better results in terms of overall. It wasn't my best overall time, but it was one of my better overall placements, especially considering the year that I had. And I think a lot of it just because it was proper pacing and proper nutrition. And knowing that and practicing. But again, it comes down to putting yourself in those situations, putting yourself in not just situations to where you'll fail, because those aren't good either. You want to learn from them, but again, it's like to the extent of, we talk about, because the same thing can happen when you talk about nutrition and fueling. Those same demands, the same as those physical demands. And so you don't want to ever put yourself in a position to where you're being so challenged with fueling and hydration with your caloric needs that you can't recover. When so many athletes put themselves in these situations, like it's going to do your body good, and it doesn't do it good. Like, it's not good. I think, like, it's just funny going back to reading Cody Beal's, one of his, infamous, I think, post-race, but after he did Chattanooga, I think, in his race fueling, I think he took in over 400 calories an hour, which is, totally counterintuitive to what most, like, you can only absorb 300 calories an hour, maybe 250. And, like, not only is he taking in 400 and something calories an hour because he's trained his gut to do so, but he's also swimming, cycling, and running much faster at a much higher intensity than the average Joe is. Our Ironman is on, for most athletes, is on a zone 1 or zone 2 feel, especially on the bike, where with intensity being lower, you should be able to take in more calories because you're at a lower intensity, versus he's able to take those in at what I would probably consider and guess he's able to race at a higher intensity on the bike because he's not going to be out there for as long. And so I just think it's one of those lessons that we should all take. Is like, am I, like, what's wrong with trying to take in more if I can absorb it and if I practice it? Because guess what? You're going to want to need it for the run. Because I don't know a single person that can take in more calories while they're running than while they're riding. And so the cycling is just nutrition and fueling on your bike is so incredibly vital, because you're addressing 2 things. You're addressing 3 things. You're catching back up, for the most part, from probably not taking in a lot of calories the 45 minutes leading up to your swim, to, if you're doing a full Ironman or a half, you're somewhere between 30 minutes at intensity to an hour and a half of intensity in the water, and then transition, and then you gotta wait a little bit for your heart rate to come down, of expending energy and sweating. And then so you're catching up a little bit from that, and then you also want to fuel yourself appropriately for the bike, while also stockpiling fluid and calories and sodium and carbohydrates and making sure your glycogen stores are topped off as best they can for the run. And but again, it's one of those things where you have to practice it, and you have to stay on it, and you have to be diligent about it. And you probably have to set a timer to take things in and understand how much you have to do. And we have had so many of our athletes that once we paired up with the core diet, and the athletes that use that, is like, they're shocked at how much they were, after they did a sweat test and body fat and all those kind of things, they were all just stunned at how many more calories and how much more fluid they should be taking in. And that it's so often that if you look at your past results, and this is probably a great place to wrap it up, because going back to the beginning in terms of you make these assessments based on what you see in your data and racing. You just assume that your bike is struggling, or you assume that your running is struggling, and you have to change everything. But what the real culprit may have been is just the fact that you didn't fuel and hydrate appropriately. So you didn't even come close to running your potential, because you were running with a flat tire, and you're running with no gas in the tank. And so look at those things first. And when you do an assessment of your race go well or not go well, so many times it comes down to nutrition. It doesn't come down to physical preparedness and current fitness level and fresh legs and did I feel stale. It does sometimes, but when you combine that, or even don't have those, but you add a poor day nutrition-wise, fueling your body is, when it comes to long course triathlon, fueling your body and making sure you're doing that appropriately can win you and lose you races.
There it is.
Man, did I lose you on that one?
No. I think it's fascinating.
No, it's just one of those things that people don't, again, but it's not, nobody sends screenshots of their calorie intake per hour. It's like nobody.
No, you're right,
that.
and so many people get wrapped up in the type of fuel they're using or all these other little things. But I think in so many aspects, of course, it has to agree with your body or whatever. But it really does come down to calories and, like you said, sodium and hydration, in a nutshell. And are you getting enough?
Are you getting enough?
Mm-hmm.
Good luck to everyone, because they can't hear us, but I'm watching them on mute, running the Boston Marathon today.
Yeah, and that's right.
Congratulations on just making it to the start line, healthy. It's one of the more fun days for sports, I think, in the endurance community, because it's so motivating for so many people, and I think it's even more motivating, I think, for a lot of people than watching Kona on television, because I think everyone has that sense that they can run. And so it's super inspiring, and I know it is for a lot of people. It is for me, and watching and checking in and focusing on athletes. And we've got 6 people there today running. And but yeah, good luck, and hope everyone had a great weekend. And we'll continue on with this freight train on Thursday.
Yeah, and I just want to say one quick thing. We had a club.
Sorry. Moving on.
No, it's just we had there was another event going down in Georgia, Swim Run Georgia, yesterday, and we had a club athlete trained his butt off for that. He was going to race it with his wife, and they didn't get the luck that the Masters did with the weather, and trained for several months and ready to go, and they ended up having to cancel that event yesterday.
Oh, dude, what a bummer.
Yeah, they got in the water and they swam, and I think they might have done one of the runs, and then the next time they got back in the water, lightning again. They held off the start for a couple hours, and I guess it was handled perfectly by the race director, and and they just really tried to get it in, but the lightning was hitting the water. So it was like, they had to cancel it eventually, and I guess everybody had a good attitude about it. But they're having another one up here in Nashville, I think, later this year.
Oh, yeah, I think I saw that. They're doing one.
Tony's the guy that raced. He contacted us. We might get him on and maybe talk about, because that's interesting to me, that whole swim run culture that sort of kind of sprung from a Tulo, how do you say it?
Hey, I'll let you take care of that.
Tulo.
Yeah, my grammar and pronunciation of most words in the English language already struggles, so I'm gonna stick away from that.
I think I asked you to do a swim run with me once, because everybody's connected. There's 2 people, and you're tied up by a rope, and you kind of looked at me like, yeah, let's just wait a few years on that.
I hear you, man.
But anyway, so I guess that's it.
That's it. We'll be back per schedule, hopefully without interruption, on Thursday.
Yeah.
Come to you again. We've added some new things to our website, some new offerings, exciting things to help additional athletes out if we can. So And if you haven't even been to the website, check it out. Got some new tabs on there with more information. And then, as usual, it is our one-stop shop for info on training camps. We do have a swim camp coming up, open water swim camp, and here coming up next month in May. Our first tri camp coming up as well, early May, which is sold out. Our June camp is also sold out, but we have a few slots left. In our August tri camp, you can email me directly if you have questions about any of those camps, and I'll send you a link, c26coach@gmail.com. We get info on swim analysis, our other podcasts, blog, a couple things on our athletes, and then tabs on coaching, and then also the training and coaching package that we offer. That's on there as well, including our very popular club membership. So check it out. And then, as always, you can email Mike if you need him, crushingiron@gmail.com. And then, again, you can always email me with any question, comments, or concerns, c26coach@gmail.com.
Yep, I would specifically say the new parts is if you go to the coaches tab, there's new bios. We kind of updated our bios a little bit, and we put new tiers for coaching.
New tiers for coaching and
under pricing under the coaching tab. So check that out and see if anything seems like it might fit for you, because we're pretty excited about it. Some different layers of options and things like that. So
yep. And Mike's bio has a picture of him in a Speedo. So, ladies, hop on over. You can click on his picture and link straight to his Tinder profile. So, hop on the website. We'll look for an increase in traffic today. And we hope you have a great week. And we'll check you out on Thursday.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. See you.
See you, man.